I think you only get the Jordan fist bump the first time out. Yves, thank you so much for joining us. A lot has changed since we first decided to have HTC on stage. You accepted the position, what has it been, a few weeks now, about a month, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's my day 14.
This is week 2 right now. So I want to actually start by giving a little bit of context for the company. So in Q2 of this year, HTC posted its 5th consecutive quarterly loss. Last July, there were some pretty large layoffs at the company. I think it was about a quarter of the staff. So my first and I think most important question for you is, why would anyone want to take this job?
That's a good question. No, first of all, I know HTC for many years. I've been executive at Orange, and you may remember that Orange was one of the first partner of HTC when we started the SPV. It was not branded HTC, it was SPV. And we moved with HTC during 15 years now altogether. So I know this company pretty well. And we have to acknowledge that this company has a very, very strong brand. Still a little bit, to be refreshed, but still very vivid and very valid in Asia, in Europe, in the US. So it's really a global brand, and it's not so unusual to have such a global brand. And there is another one, which is Vive, according to that. Second thing, this culture of innovation is very strong as HTC. In the past few years, you saw the first blockchain phone, you saw virtual reality being led by HTC. The team is from a technology perspective, very, very strong. You may have realized that we have been launching in the market the 5G hub, which has been adopted by more than 10 big carriers across the globe.
So you started, I think one of your most recent products is the 5G hotspot.
No, I mean, the latest one is a Cosmos. You use a new headset, which has been released yesterday.
In the mobile space.
Yeah, in the mobile phone, in the mobile space, yes, it is a 5G. And again, you mentioned regarding the P&L, which is significantly negative. But if you look at the balance sheet of the company, it's very strong asset. We have 0 debt. We have a lot of asset aside of the brand, outside of the IP, outside of the building. We have 1 billion cash. So yes, it is a challenge, but we have a lot of strengths. And I personally do believe that there is a lot to be done to refresh the company and to make the company being a leading company in the next few months and few years again. I strongly believe that there is here a fantastic challenge, and we will get there. You will see, we will get there.
So again, there's a big difference between the next few years and the next few months. You feel like there's enough in the works right now that there's going to start to be a turnaround in the next few months?
I mean, if we have a credo at HTC, this credo is 5G plus XR. Why do we have this credo? Because the 5G will change a lot of things in the industry. The 5G is not only 4G plus 1G. The 5G means that the latency of the network will become very, very short, or much, much shorter. But also something which is very important underneath, and that people are not used to speak about, is IPv6 standard, where all the connected objects will have their own IP address, so that we may be able to address all those objects individually. And what does it mean fundamentally? Today, if you have a smartphone or if you have something, whatever connected object on the 4G, the network is driving the object. I mean, the object is a slave, the device is a slave of the network.
But it sounds like, again, you're approaching this from somebody who's spent a lot of time in telecom, which makes sense. But what is the benefit to a company that we've traditionally thought of as producing handsets? Are you talking about creating like 5G infrastructure? What role specifically is HTC going to play in 5G going forward?
If you believe in XR, augmented, or whatever is the X, if you believe in XR, it's obvious that it will never work if you don't have, high boundaries, low latency. And customers, what they want is an end-to-end experience. And providers, specifically in the B2B environment, they don't have this knowledge of end-to-end experience. So if you only provide a piece of it, I think you miss parts of what customer will request. And if you listen your customers, then you see that they are struggling from the access point up to the content to have a very smooth experience. And this is requesting a lot of technology behind. And that's what HTC can provide, because we have this background of network and carrier technology up to the Viveport, which is our content platform. So, and there are not so many companies, to my knowledge, it's the only one, who can really be in a position to provide this type of end-to-end solution. So for a B2C perspective, it may not make so many sense. But if you talk about B2C, hospital, university, security, or this type of thing, it makes a lot of sense to have an integrated solution.
So let's break that down then a little bit. It makes sense from the standpoint of a hotspot. It makes sense from a standpoint of an HTC device with 5G or Vive, as you mentioned before. But where does HTC come in when we're talking about dealing with like a hospital, for example?
If you talk about an hospital, for instance, where you may have nurse to be trained, or when you have doctor to do their job in a chirurgy, for instance, you need to make sure that you have, if with the 5G is also coming the edge, and if you look at how far we are from a carrier perspective at providing edge solution, we are pretty far. Where we at HTC, having the entire value chain, we can provide some edge solution to the B2B companies, which are much cheaper and much easy to install compared to what they have now, which is almost nothing in terms of edge computing.
So how much it sounds like you're talking mostly about the enterprise side of the Vive business, which I think is something that is becoming more and more interesting to you. What do you see the breakdown being going forward? Obviously, the Cosmos launched, yesterday here in the States at least, so clearly you're very interested in the consumer side as well. Going forward, how much of HTC's business in VR is going to be consumer versus enterprise? First,
I think we should not oppose B2C and B2B, because B2B is, at the end of the day, B2B2C. So they are kind of complementary. Now, if we look at all the forecasts in terms of data consumption, in the next 6 years, the volume of data that will be consumed by everyone, B2B and B2C, will be 10 times more than the one we have today. So it's a big increase. But what's more fundamental is the way this increase will take place. Today, 70 to 80% of the consumption of data in 5G is B2C, mostly video streaming consumption. If you look at 6 to 5 years from now, it will be reverse, which means that 80% will be B2B and not B2C anymore. So, and if our customers are asking us to help them to build this type of B2B experience, we are listening to our customers. This is part of our DNA, and we have to follow what our customers are requesting. And the growth in terms of volume of data, which means that in terms of business, is toward B2B.
So to re-ask the question in a more pragmatic way then, do you think you can continue to compete with a Facebook in the consumer space for VR?
I don't believe that HTC is here to compete with Facebook. Facebook, HTC, Valve, Microsoft, some Chinese brand, we are here to create a new world. And we have an incredible opportunity and responsibility to create the virtual world. I think there will not be only one company, there will not be only one God of this world. Each of us will be part of this new world creation. And what is fascinating is how together, all together, at competing or co-working or co-competing together, we'll be able to build this world. So I think the space is huge, the space is very large, and all together we'll be able to build something. And for sure, Facebook will have its own character or specificity, and HTC will continue to have and to pursue around its own journey. From time to time, we will recover, we'll overlap. That's normal life, and it's good to have this type of overlapping. But I think on the long term, we will not compete, and we'll together participate of creating this new world opportunity.
So the world of VR of XR is going to be large, but right now the number of headsets that are actually sold is pretty small right now. I mean, is it increasing at a rapid enough rate that you think that that XR is going to be HTC's primary business in the coming years?
Again, it's not only the headset, it's a service, and it's part of the infrastructure.
Sure, but all of the different levels of XR, software, hardware, all of those things, whatever the Vive portion of HTC is that going to overtake mobile?
On long-term basis, yes. If I look at 5 years, okay. Yes, for sure.
So you feel like 5 years is probably the point with which those two lines cross for you?
I wish before.
Sure, of course.
But reasonably speaking, it will be 4 to 5 years.
That's when you sit down with the board and the investors and have all these very difficult conversations on your first day. That's the realistic timeline that you're giving for that change.
We will do all our best to make it shorter. But the customer adoption is key. It's not only a question of technology, how people are adopting new technology. And we all know that it is absolutely critical. At the end of the day, we have human beings in front of us. And those human beings, they are dealing with something totally new, totally unusual, which is not in our human DNA, which is the virtual world. And the virtual world was not existing 5 years ago. And suddenly you want 8 billion people to embrace the virtual world, knowing that most of them are still not embraced the digital world. So there is a ramping curve aside of the technology, which is a psychological, something which is inside of the human being. And we have to respect, human being being obliged to learn and to feel more comfortable. And today we have to acknowledge that the vast majority of people are not comfortable with virtual reality. That means that we are not doing a good job. And we have to listen our customer even more to provide them a better experience which fits with what they are willing to embrace in this virtual world.
So I think it's a fair assessment to say that it's going to take some sort of learning and contextualization to get more consumers to understand what VR is and why it should play a role in their life. But obviously we're at a point of saturation right now where people don't need smartphones explained to them. Everyone, probably assume in this audience right now, has a smartphone. So about 8 years ago, I think HTC was somewhere in the neighborhood of about 11% of global smartphone sales. When you come in as a fresh face, as an outsider and are able to reflect upon that, where now it's at a point where it's sort of in that other column when we see those global numbers, what went wrong? Why did the numbers drop so precipitously over the years?
I mean, HTC has stopped innovating in the hardware of a smartphone, and people like Apple, like Samsung, and most recently like Huawei, they have done an incredible job at investing in the hardware. So and we simply didn't. Because we have been focusing on investing on innovation on the virtual reality. So I remember when I was young, somebody told me to be right at the wrong time is to be wrong at the right time is to be right. I think we have to be right at the wrong time. So, and now we have to try to catch up. Yes, we make a timing mistake. It is very difficult to anticipate the time and to have the time filling.
Yeah.
And HTC made a mistake in terms of timing, and it's a difficult mistake, and we are paying for that. But we have still so many assets in terms of innovation, in terms of team, in terms of balance sheet, that I do believe that I'm sure that we are recovering of this timing mistake. Yes.
So you feel that the company diverted too much of its assets towards XR versus staying on the mobile space and innovating there?
I think the company has been switching too early, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because obviously there was a market, and you just sort of you let your foot off the pedal, as it were, in that category. So how do you right that ship when it comes to these devices? I mean, how do you change that? You know, how do you start to innovate in that way? And are you going to be able to, in this 5-year time frame or any time frame, recapture any of that market share that you've lost?
I mean, in terms of smartphone, I think we have to acknowledge that HTC has to improve, and we will continue to work on the smartphone. We are working on the smartphone, and obviously, I think that there are some low-hanging fruits that we can grab, which will allow us to do better.
So what's a good example of a current low-hanging fruit that you can use to start to increase again?
I mean, if we look at our price positioning in terms of smartphone, we do not have the volume anymore to make smartphones. So we have to acknowledge the reality as it is. So if we want to catch up, we need to partner with some people in order to grab the volume and to restart. So I think that's what we have to assess. That's what we have to discuss internally, and eventually to put in place. So now regarding the second part of our business, which is where we want to go, which is 5G and XR. I think in 5G we are pretty good. I think we are the only 5G company, including Samsung, who can really argue that they are in almost all countries who have started the 5G. We are in Australia, we are in Switzerland, we are in France, we are in the UK, we are here in the US with Sprint. I will say we are in China with China Mobile. In every country we as long as started the 5G, we are here. So on the 5G, we are right on spot. We are a leading company. Regarding virtual reality, we start the Cosmos. Obviously, this is, to my view, the best, phone. I mean, the best headset experience that you can find. So we are really leading this part, and being better, improving better. We will create even more traction toward customers, and hopefully they will continue to join the VR world and helping us to build this world all together.
So I don't want to leave mobile phones entirely, because obviously it's like a huge part of the company's business. What does that short-term play look like? How much of it is OEMing for other companies in different markets? How much of it is licensing out the brand and letting somebody slap, an HTC brand on these devices? Is that what you do to start getting yourself back in that game?
I mean, there are today a lot of thought, a lot of discussion.
Yeah.
We do not have finalized them all. We will come back to you at the right time, hopefully very soon. We know our weaknesses, and we try to solve them through different options. Some of them you just mentioned, and we'll move forward, and hopefully we'll be able to satisfy our customers. And I hope that a few months from now on, we'll be able to provide good surprise to our customers, and then we may change the game. Yes.
Is there a market that makes a particular sense right now? We just spoke to Carl at OnePlus about India. Obviously, it's a huge market. There's a lot of opportunity. Is there a particular segment that you're going after right now with mobile devices?
I mean, everybody knows about the trade war between China and USA. Everybody knows the impact of this trade war in Europe. So at HTC, we are not looking at low-end devices. We are looking at countries which has higher GDP. So the market is changing. The competition is changing. We all know, and we all face, the situation where Huawei market share is going down, and that customers are disappointed not being able to have, the latest Huawei phone anymore. So how to give our customers or people, in Europe, the opportunity to come back to what they wish in terms of best-in-class hardware, in terms of best-in-class photography. This is a question that HTC will try to solve in the next few months.
So when you're having these conversations, these, again, very difficult conversations with the board, and you're giving them a timeline. We discussed the timeline with which XR and mobile crosses. What timeline are you giving them for profitability? When can we expect HTC to return to profitability?
I mean, first of all, those discussions are board discussions. So I will provide different strategic options to the board, very soon, and the board will have to decide and to make some choice. And then
do you have what is your gut feeling? What are you telling them? When do you feel like that ship is going to be righted?
As I'm telling you, I truly believe that this is linked to the way carrier will deploy the 5G. And you know that 2020 will be the starting point of the 5G. And usually it takes 2 years to deploy a network. So 2023, we will have in developed countries a significant coverage. Starting from here, you will see a ramp up. That's why I believe that 2025, for sure, probably even earlier, will be the turning point for sure. If possible, earlier. But we are dependent of the carrier network deployment speed.
Okay, we'll meet back here in 2023. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Yves, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.